Hare Krishna. Good morning from, we used to sing good morning from Jagannath Puri down. Good morning from Budapest, Hungary. It's morning here. These are our adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a little awkward for us traveling so much. So I'll just begin today by reciting a few prayers. Narayanam namaskrityam nadhamschaiva narotamam devim saraswatyam vyasam tato jayamudirayat vedi ramayaneschaiva purane bharate tata adavante cha madhye cha hari sarvatra giyate Mukam karoti vachalam bhangum langayate girim yet kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Semakaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinkaname Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Dharma Projita Kaita Vota Padamo Nimatsaram Satam Vidyam Vastavamatra Vasti Shivadam Tapatrayon Mudanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Padayashvara Sadyo Hridyavarudhyate Chakriti Vishu Shushu Vistakshanat Nigamako pataro galitam phalam shukamukadamitra javasam yutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam mahoraho rasika bhuvi babuka anarto pasamam sakshat bhakti yogam adhoksaje lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam Yasham Vaishayamanayam Krishna Paramapurushe Bhakti Udpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha Srimad Bhagavatam Puranamamalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramaham Samekam Amalam Gyanam Padam Giyate Tatra Gyana Vairagya Bhakti Sahitam Naiskam Yama Viskritam Touchstring Supatin Vicharana Pado Bhaktya Vimuchin Nadaha Arto Yam Brahma Sutranam Bhadatarta Vinirnaya Gayatri Basharupo So Vedakta Pari Brahmitaha Sarva Vedeti Hasanam Sadam Sadam Samudritam Sarva Vedanta Sadam Hi Srimad Bhagavatam Ishyate Tadrasamrita Tripta Shyananyatya Saduchi Kuchit Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees. My name is Madhavananda Das. This is a series of talks we're giving. We're calling Meeting in Kurukshetra because we feel this is a most important, essential subject in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And why is that the most essential? That's our discussion. This is session 103 in the series of talks. As Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu commented, he said, creeping through the Bhagavatam in this way. We've been speaking from the 47th chapter of the 10th canto. I'd like to just offer some prayers from Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary in the 46th chapter. Gachotava brajam somya pitruna pritim avaha gopinam aviyogadim matsandesha vimochayat. Krishna, he told Uddhava, you go to Braj and you give this message. And Jiva Goswami, he offers pranams to him. Artaika sadhanam Krishnam artan braja janam shatan tam chatasvakam bhaktam archa vande durasaya. With a very sorrowful heart, hopeless. He says, in this mood, Artaika saranam Krishnam, I take shelter, I offer my obeisances to Krishna, who's a person who's the only shelter for persons who are suffering, who's Artan Brajajanam Shaitan, is the only shelter for the suffering people of Braj, and I offer my vandana to Uddhava, who alleviated their suffering. So we're going on in this 47th chapter. We heard something about the Uddhava, his message that he passed on Krishna's message that he spoke through Uddhava to the gopis, and Nanda Maharaj and the gopis. Then we heard something of the reply of the gopis. And then we heard something about the subject matter, what happened. And in our last session, we read from text 54 and 56 of this chapter, 54 and 55. We spoke about how Uddhava was going throughout Braj and seeing all the different places and speaking the pastimes of Krishna there. Uvasa katachin masan gopinam vinada suchaha Krishna-lila katam gayan ramayam asa gokulam. How Uddhava stayed there for several months, and by staying there and speaking Krishna Katha, he dispelled the suffering of the people of Braj and brought happiness to everyone. And Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnava Toshani explains how Uddhava also gave some secret message to the animals and the birds and trees there, that Krishna was still thinking of them. And text 55 describes Yadantyahani mandasya braje vatsit sa Uddhavaha Bajoka sam Krishna prayan asan Krishna shivartaya. That he stayed there, and his stay seemed like just a flash, just like a brief moment, because Uddhava was always discussing Krishna Katha. And text 56 describes that he went all over Braj, and he inspired everyone in this way, speaking about Krishna. And we commented how this is the roots of parikrama, of our Gaudiya Vaishnava parikrama. And the mood of our parikrama is separation, where we're going in the mood of the gopis, where the gopis are going throughout Braj after Krishna left, and they're searching for him. This is our mood in parikrama. We're searching for Krishna. We're searching for the associates of Krishna, the associates of Mahaprabhu. And how Uddhava began all of this. So then today I want to begin reading with text 58, which is the beginning of Uddhava's song. In 6 verses, Uddhava then gives his response, his personal response back to the gopis. And this is significant also in our culture of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not a class, we often comment on this, that rather it's Krishna Katha, and that Krishna Katha, as we often cite in Bhagavatam 11.3.30, it's Parasparana Kathanam, it's back and forth. So Uddhava came and he spoke Krishna's message to the Brijbasis. Then we heard back from the gopis. And then again we heard back from Uddhava responding to the mood of the gopis. So this is the first of those verses. This is text number 58. Eta param tanu brita bhuvi gopavadvo govinda e nikalatmani ruda bhavaha. Excuse me. Eta param tanu brito bhuvi gopavadvo govinda eva nikalatmani ruda bhavaha. Vanchanti ma yadbhava biyo muneyo vayam cha kim brahma janma birananda katara sasya. Uddhava sings, he says that amongst all the persons on earth, these cowherd women alone have actually perfected their embodied lives, for they've achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Lord Govinda. Their pure love is hankered after by those who fear material existence, by great sages, and by ourselves as well. For one who has tasted the narrations of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class Brahmin, or even as Lord Brahma himself? Gora graganya gana gotra goloduhadam Goranga gudatama gopyada kopa briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami. So this verse is describing that Param, Eta Param, Eta meaning these ladies, he's referring to them, Eta Param, Param means the topmost, or here Param means them alone. Eta Param Tanu Brita, out of all the different persons in this world, Eva, Uddhava uses this word Eva, means them alone, them exclusively. Of all these personalities, they've achieved this Ruda Bhav, meaning Adi Ruda Mahabhav, meaning the topmost level of ecstatic love for Krishna. And we want this thing. This is what Uddhava is realizing. So I want to look a little today, what is the significance, what is the necessity of Krishna leaving Vrindavan? What is the necessity of plunging the gopis into separation? What is the necessity of sending Uddhava to Braj with this message? And how does it connect with Kurukshetra and with Gaura-lila? So this verse today, we're hearing that Kim Brahma Jamabir Ananta Kata Rasasya, that for someone who has Ananta Kata Rasasya, has some taste in the topics of the Supreme Lord, is unlimited, or the topics are unlimited, then what is the use? Kim Brahma Jamabir. What is the use of even taking birth as Lord Brahma? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his Sarita Darshani commentary, he speaks about three types of birth: Sokra Janma, Savitra Janma, and Daiksha Janma. And how this verse describes all three of these births, how all three are completely useless. They don't compare to someone who's Ananta Kata Rasasya, who has some taste for Krishna Kata. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains these three types of births in his book Brahmana Vaishnava, because this topic of Janma is very important. And it's significant in this verse, our acharyas have commented that Uddhava, he's saying that someone may protest it, that how is it you're a Kshatriya, these ladies are just Vaishyas, and you're glorifying them. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and other acharyas said, no. Uddhava is saying, no, you don't understand. And this, therefore, he says, Kim Brahma Janmabir. That even if someone takes birth as Lord Brahma, which is the highest birth one can take in the material world, still, what's the use of it if they don't have this Krishna Kata? But these gopis, Eta Param, they have this topmost thing. Eva, exclusively, they're the ones who have this Madanakya Mahabhav, this Ruda Mahabhav, something which even Lord Brahma doesn't have. So our acharyas have described as three types of birth. I wanted to say a few words about this. This Sokya, Savitra, and Daiksha, and they're explained in the Bhagavad Samhita, in Bhagavatam, and different Vedic literatures. Sokra Janma means a seminal birth from a father and mother. That's the first birth. And then there's the Savitra Janma. That's when someone receives a Gayatri mantra. And that Gayatri mantra is received by everyone in Vedic culture. The Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, and the Brahmins. Only the Sudras don't receive that Gayatri mantra. So that's Savitra Janma. In our movement, we have Sokya Janma, we have our seminal birth, and we also have our Sokya, our Savitra Janma. Someone receives the Gayatri mantra. But there's a third, Daiksha Janma. That Daiksha Janma is when one becomes initiated by Guru and is accepted by him. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he says that only someone who's qualified as a Brahman can achieve that spiritual initiation. So Kim Brahma Janma Bir. What's the use of taking birth in all these different ways if Anantakata Rasasya, if someone doesn't have Shama Eva Hi Kevalam, someone Bhagavatam says elsewhere that Shama Eva Hi Kevalam, what's the use of so much of the Vanashram Dharma or different things if someone doesn't have Kata Ruchi, some taste for hearing Krishna Kata? We have to come to that point. So this verse is describing the glories of the gopis. And I would like to share with you today a very beautiful pranam mantra, which Srila Sanatana Goswami and Brihad Vaishnava Toshani has composed, and Srila Jiva Goswami, as his obedient follower, has also given in his Laghu Vaishnava Toshani. And this is something I'd like to focus on some today. This verse is obeisances to Uddhava. It's beginning, these 6 verses, the song of Uddhava. Uddhava's response to the gopis. Gopi Mahatmya Vidvaryam Sarva Bhago Vatotamam Tam Uddhavam Prapadyeham Tad Gitarta Vilubdadi. That I'm offering my pranams, my prapadya, my surrender to Uddhava. That Uddhava, he's a very, very excellent person, Vidvaryam. He knows, he has this understanding of the Gopi Mahatmya, of the greatness of the gopis, Sarva Bhagavatotamam. And I'm offering my obeisances to him because Tad Gitarta Vilubdadi. I want to understand the song of Uddhava. I want to understand what Uddhava is saying. So this is the beginning of this section, the commentary of these 2 acharyas, Srila Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami. They give this pranam to Uddhava, and this is significant. It's significant. We want to understand what Uddhava is saying. Why is it so important? Well, it's so important because it's important to Krishna. Krishna wants to understand the greatness of the gopis. And so to understand the greatness of the gopis, Krishna leaves Vrindavan. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sartadarshini in the 46th chapter, he explains that Krishna does this to prove the love of the gopis, by plunging them into separation, so to expose to the whole world the greatness of their love. And if Krishna hadn't left Vrindavan, who would have understood the love of the gopis? And then heightening that separation by being in Mathura and then going to Dwarka. And there's some letters exchanged. We'll hear later about that from Srila Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu. Leading up to this meeting, this ecstatic meeting in Kurukshetra, where there's 2 things together in one place. There's both union and separation together at the same time. There's union because the gopis are meeting with Krishna, but there's separation because they're thinking Krishna is going to be returning to Dwarka soon. There's separation because they're feeling the separation that they've been experiencing since Krishna left Vrindavan. So Krishna meets the gopis there to show that yes, I've understood something of your feelings. I sent Uddhava there. Krishna plunged the gopis into a fire of separation. And then to understand the nature of that separation, he sent Uddhava to go and hear from the gopis. And now we're hearing something back from Uddhava, how he's going to explain this to Krishna. And again, this Uddhava appears in Gaura-lila as Paramananda Puri. Kavi Karnapur describes Puri Paramanando Asid Uddhava Pura. That Uddhava became Paramananda Puri. So that same Uddhava who's understood the message of the gopis, he is able to convey this to Krishna, because Krishna himself doesn't understand the mood of the gopis. And therefore, this verse we're reading from today, Uddhava is singing that only the gopis have this root above, this Madhanaki Mahabhav, this topmost level of ecstatic love. Only they understand Krishna completely. So this verse is very foundational in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It sets the stage for Krishna-lila in Dwarka, in Mathura and Dwarka, and it sets the stage for Gaura-lila, especially in Jagannath Puri, which is reflecting the mood of Krishna's meeting with the gopis in Kurukshetra. The Rath Yatra is a reflection of that. So the verse is describing that even Lord Brahma can't understand this thing. Kim Brahma Jamabir Ananta Kata Rasasya. That even Lord Brahma can't understand. So what's the value of taking birth as Brahma if you can't understand this thing? As Srila Prabhupada described in a conversation in 1977 in Jagannath Puri, he said that the big demigods, their intelligence is also lacking. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kona Bhagyavan, someone who's very fortunate, he can understand. And Prabhupada says, Brahmara Durlabha Prema, even Brahma cannot understand what is Krishna consciousness. In Lochandas Thakur has sung in his famous song, Nitai Guna Mani, he's also given the same description. Dinahina patita pramara nahi bache, Brahma Durlabha Prema sabakare jache. He's glorifying Lord Nityananda. That Lord Nityananda, he gave this love to those persons who are dinahina, who are very sinful, who are destitute, who are patita pamara, who are fallen, patita and pamara, who are very, very wretched personalities. And this love, Brahma Durlabha Prema, it's very, very difficult, unattainable, even for Lord Brahma. Prema Sabakari Jachi. But Lord Nityananda, he's giving it to everyone, even to people who don't want it. Nahi Bachi, Nahi means they don't want this thing even, but still he's giving it to them. This is such an astonishing thing. And this is this comes from Krishna leaving Vrindavan, plunging the gopis into the ecstasy of separation, and then Krishna sends Uddhava to try to understand the mood of the gopis. Otherwise, who can understand the mood of the gopis? In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's described in several places that this preaching is the activity of the gopis. And in Madhya Lila chapter 8, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains, Sabhi eka shaki ganir ihan adikar, Saki hoite hoye lila bishtar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sabhi eka, the same word eka that's used in this verse we're reading from in the 47th chapter of the Bhagavatam today, where Uddhava is speaking about the gopis, that only the gopis, he says, understand this. Kaviraj Goswami uses the same language in Madhya Lila chapter 8. Sabhi eka shaki ganar ihan adikar. Only amongst all different personalities, only the gopis are able to understand Krishna's pastimes, only they have the adhikar, the qualification for that. And from the gopis, Saki hoy te hoy, a lilar bishtar. It's such a very important point, these two words, Lila bishtar. These pastimes, they're bishtar, they're expanded by the gopis, and it's only from the gopis who have the adhikar to understand these things. This word bishtar is used again in the next verse. Kaviraj Goswami further describes the qualification of the gopis. Saki bina e lila pushti nahi hoy. Saki lila bishtariya saki ashvadoy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So there's the same word vina is used. Only the gopis. Saki bina, without the gopis, a lila pusha nahi hoy. Now the word pusha is used. Pusha means to nourish. The pastimes of the gopis are nourished. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are nourished, I mean to say, by the gopis. They're doing pushta, they're doing bishtar, they're expanding these things, and they're doing saki ashvadoy. Ashvadoy means to relish. Because they're relishing these pastimes, because they can relish them more than anyone, even more than Lord Brahma, then these two things happen. The pastimes of Lila Pushta and Lila Bishtar. The pastimes are nourished and the pastimes are expanded. This means Gora Lila. Because the gopis are suffering a separation from Krishna, their ecstasy is heightened again and again and again, and they're experiencing this Madhanakya Mahabhav. And Krishna himself can't understand this. What to speak of Lord Brahma, even Krishna himself can't understand this thing. So he sends Uddhava to Braj so that he can try to understand it. And that same Uddhava comes again in Gora Lila as Paramananda Puri and has a very important role in Gora Lila. Because through this Uddhava, Krishna's understanding the mood of the gopis, and the same Uddhava who's understood that, he's been there in Braj. He went to the Braj University opened by the gopis and Srimati Radharani. He came there and he saw what was going on. So later that Paramananda Puri, Uddhava came as Paramananda Puri, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him, we find it in Madhya Lila chapter 10, before the Rath Yatra festival, that Uddhava, Paramananda Puri, he came to Jagannath Puri, and Mahaprabhu told him, Prabhu kahi toma shange rahite vancha hoy, mora kripa kori kora linadli ashray, that you please stay with me here in Jagannath Puri. You accept the shelter of Jagannath Puri. Niladri ashray is this phrase that he uses. And that shelter of Jagannath Puri is shelter of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And alternatively, Gauranga Mahaprabhu is taking shelter of Paramananda Puri, who's Uddhava, so that Krishna, who's Gauranga Mahaprabhu, can understand the mood of the gopis. And Kaviraj Goswami then explains where Paramananda Puri stayed. Where did he stay in Jagannath Puri? Initially, when he first came. Later, he stayed, there's a police station near where he stayed. There's a well in that place. But initially, when he came there, Kashi Mishra Abase Nibrite Ekagar, Prabhu Tanre Dila A Sevara Kinkara. That he stayed in the house of Kashi Mishra, the Gambira, along with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There was one Nibrita Gar, one solitary room there, which he gave to Paramananda Puri. And Mahaprabhu also gave Paramananda Puri Dila Ar Seva Kinkara. He gave him one Kinkara, one servant. So what is the significance of Paramananda Puri staying in the Gambira with Gauranga Mahaprabhu? The significance is because Paramananda Puri is Uddhava. And it's only Uddhava who's understood this mood of the gopis. And therefore, Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they begin this chapter by offering pranams to Uddhava, saying that Gopi Mahatmya Vidvaryam, I'm offering obeisances to him, this Uddhava, because he's the only person who understands the gopis. And the gopis are the only persons who understand Krishna, the only persons who have this Madhanaki Mahabhav. So this Uddhava has a very special situation. He has a very, very special position. And Jiva and Sanatana Goswami says, I want to understand the meaning of his words. What is the importance of understanding his words? Because Krishna wants to understand Uddhava's words. Because Uddhava understands the mood of the gopis, and only the gopis have this Madhanaki Mahabhav. So therefore, the same Uddhava who's spoken to Krishna in Mathura, he comes again in Gaura-lila's Paramananda Puri, and he stays in the Gambira, which is a place where Krishna, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, goes to taste the mood of the gopis and Radharani in their separation, because Mahaprabhu's feelings are primarily separation. So that same Uddhava goes. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to taste the mood of Radhabhav, he leaves Navadvip. In Navadvip, he's there, he's enjoying many different pastimes of different devotees. And sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Dhruva Maharaj, or Prahlad Maharaj, or Lord Shiva. Sometimes he's in the mood of the queens of Dwarka. He's in the mood of so many different devotees, sometimes also the gopis. But he has to leave Navadvip, Mayapur, because to taste the mood of Radharani, he has to become Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. He has to become one-pointed. And therefore, to achieve that, he takes sannyas, which means Radhabhav. And where does he go? He comes to Orissa. He comes to Jagannath Puri. And that entrance into Orissa begins when he arrives in Remuna, which is the place of the Samadhi of Madhavendra Puri, and is the place of Kirchar Gopinath. And what is the significance and the connection of Kirchar Gopinath and Madhavendra Puri with all of this? Well, it was Madhavendra Puri who is considered to be the root of the Chaitanya tree, because it was he who first expressed these feelings of separation that Radharani and the gopis had. And Madhavendra Puri, we know, went to Remuna, and he saw the beautiful deity of Kirchar Gopinath. He offered obeisances to him, and he saw the wonderful service that the devotees were offering to Gopinath. And at that time, Madhavendra Puri thought to himself, oh, if I could taste a little bit of that sweet rice, then I can also offer it to my Gopal, that Gopal deity who manifested previously to him at Govardhan Hill. And Madhavendra Puri established a temple for Gopal on top of Govardhan Hill. So he was thinking like that, and then we know famously that Gopinath became known as Kirchar, the stealer of the sweet rice, because he stole that sweet rice for Madhavendra Puri. And Mahaprabhu, when he went there with Nityananda Prabhu and other devotees, they spoke about this pastime. They relished it there. So there's another reason why this is significant, this pastime. Murari Gupta is one of the biographers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he's written a book called the Chaitanya Charit Mahakabya. And in that literature, he's spoke about Ramuna. He said, Tato Jagamat Bhagavan Dinai Katipaya Prabhu Ramunaya Mahapuya Dratu Gopala Deva Kam. That Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he went to Remuna, and Dinai Katipaya, he stayed there for a few days in that place which is Mahapurya, a great town. And the purpose being, Dratu Gopala Deva Kam. He wanted to see the Gopal deity. And what is so special about that Gopal deity? Then Murari Gupta explains, Varanashyam Uddhavena, Stapita Pujita Pura, Brahmanu Ragatartaya Tattagatvastita Harim. That Uddhava was a person who previously established and worshipped Gopinath in Varanasi. And then later, that deity of Gopal, he came there to Remuna and he stayed there. So it was Uddhava who established Kirchar Gopinath. And this is described by Murari Gupta. It's also described by Lochan Das Thakur in his Chaitanya Mangal. So because Jagannath Puri, this is significance because Jagannath Puri and Orissa, this is Gupta Vrindavan. And the entrance to that Gupta Vrindavan is in Ramuna. That entrance is going through the deity established by Uddhava. And he established that deity of Gopinath, who's the Lord of the Gopis, because he saw that Krishna is the Lord of the Gopis. He saw the mood of the Gopis in this 47th chapter, the 10th canto. And Uddhava saw only the Gopis have this Madhanaki Mahabhav. And so he began singing their glories. Is that Uddhava who established this deity of Gopinath? And so to connect with Uddhava and to connect with that mood, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he on his way to Jagannath Puri, he passes through there to connect with Madhavendra Puri and to connect with Uddhava in that mood. Also, when Gauranga Mahaprabhu visited Mathura and Braj, Murari Gupta, also in his Chaitanya Charita Mahakavi in the 4th canto, he speaks about, he says, Uddhavasya Gapasya Dakini Shatadeva Tayam, that Mahaprabhu came and he stayed in the house of Uddhava. He visited the house of Uddhava in Mathura. Lochan Das Thakur also mentions this in Chaitanya Mangal. So Krishna as Gauranga Mahaprabhu wants to, Krishna's coming as Gauranga Mahaprabhu to understand these instructions, this mood of the gopis, which were given by the words of Uddhava. And it's significant also that Krishna's message to the gopis through Uddhava was that you should practice yoga. And we spoke about this elaborately in some of our previous sessions, that there's an external and internal reason for that. An external reason why Krishna told the gopis to practice yoga was to bewilder people who were attached to that kind of thing. But internally, he was giving another different message, a secret message for the gopis. So externally, he's telling them that to do yoga. But later himself, when Krishna speaks to Uddhava Gita in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, he says, Nasadayati mam yogo, nasankhya dharma Uddhava, naswadayas chago yata bhakti mamorjita. That I'm not attracted by yoga. Nasadayati mam yogo. So we can understand that Krishna's message is tricky. There's some layers to it. There's some hidden message which is given there. Because he's saying, Nasadayati mam yoga, nasankhya dharma Uddhava. He told the gopis, you do sankhya yoga, you practice dharma, you practice yoga, you worship me in this. But then he tells Uddhava, you can't get me by this thing. But in this verse today, we're hearing that Kim Brahma Jamabir Ananta Kata Rasasya, that the quality of the gopis is Ananta Kata Rasasya, that they have this taste for Krishna Kata in a way that nobody else has. So this is one of the purposes of Krishna. He wants to come, he wants to taste this ecstasy that the gopis have, because only the gopis are able to nourish Radha Krishna-lila. Pushti means to nourish, and only the gopis are able to expand it, Bishtar. And this is significant, this Pushti and Bishtar, these two words from Madhya-lila chapter 8, because the gopis, they're expanding Radha Krishna-lila. How are they expanding it? They're expanding it as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They're expanding it when they come, when Lalita comes as Subdhamana Goswami, and Vishaka comes as Ramananda Roy, and they're speaking to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Gita Govinda, and the songs of Vidyapati and Chandidas. Thereby they're expanding the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna being expanded by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming. So the quality of the gopis is Ananta Kata Rasasya. They have this Kata Ruchi. Tava Katamrita Tapta Jivanam. As a Gopi Gita, the gopis sing in the Gopi Gita, that this Kata of Krishna, this is our life. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relished the same verse, Tava Katamrita Tapta Jivanam, in Jagannath Puri, and teaching us that this Krishna Kata in the mood of the gopis is our life of everything. In the 25th chapter of the Madhya-lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes the nature of Mahaprabhu's pastimes and how we can approach them. Chaitanya Chaitanya Amritapur, Krishna-lila Sukarpur, Duhe Mele Hoisa Madhurya. Sadhu Guru Prasade, Tahaje Ashwade, Sehi Jana Madhurya Prachuja. Gora He. Chaitanya Lila Amritapur, that the pastimes of Mahaprabhu are full of amrit, full of nectar. That nectar gives us life. It's a life. It's our spiritual life. It's our everything. And Krishna-lila Sukarpur, the pastimes of Krishna are like camphor. And Duhi Mili, when these two are put together, Hoya Sumadurja. Hoya means, it's an exclamation. They're becoming Sumadurja, very, very sweet, very, very palatable. And how do we relish that? Sadhu Guru Prasadi Tahaje Asvade. We were able to relish it. Asvadana, the same word is used, again, from Madhya Lila chapter 8, which is indicated also in this verse today, Ananta Katara Sasya, that the gopis are tasting this thing. Asvada means to taste. And it's only the gopis who are able to taste this thing. So here Kaviraj Goswami is saying that we should put these two together. Chaitanya Lila Amritapur, Krishna Lila Sukarpur. You take the Gora Lila and the Krishna Lila and you put them together, and Dui Mili Hoy Sumadurja. They become very, very sweet. But how do you taste that thing? First of all, it has to be offered. It has to be relished by someone else. Sadhu Guru Prasade. We take it as a prasadam of Sadhu Guru. And then Tahaje Asvade. Through their lips, we can taste their remnants. Sejani Madhurya Prachur. Then we can also understand that thing. And therefore, even Lord Brahma can't understand that thing. But only someone who's following in the mood of the gopis through our disciplic line, Sadhu Guru Prasade, who's accepted that personality, who's Gora Priyajana, who's an intimate associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's following in the mood of the gopis. That person who's relishing the prasad, the taste that they've gotten from their guru and the sadhus, that person, they can understand it. And only that person can understand it. And therefore, Kaviraj Goswami goes on to say, Jailila Amrita Bine Kaya Jadi Anapani Tabi Bhakti Durbala Jiban Jada Eka Bindu Pani Upalita Tanu Mani Hase Gaye Koreye Natan Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jailila Amrita Bine Bine means without. If without Amrita Bini, without this nectar of the pastimes of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if we don't relish this thing from Sadhu Guru Prasade, we're not Tahe Jai Ashwadi, if we're not relishing what Gurudev said, Kaya Jadi Anapani, this Anapani, this is ordinary food. If we're only eating Jadi Anapani, if we're only taking ordinary things, then Tabi Bhakti Durbala Jiban, our life becomes Durbala Jiban. It becomes troubled. Or Srila Prabhupada translates, he says, our life becomes weakened. But Jara Eka Bindu Pani, Utfalita Tanumani, Hasi Gai Koreye Nartan. If we take just a drop of that, then our body and mind become very jubilant. And Hasi Gai Koreye Nartan, we are able to join the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can't join the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu unless you're moving, because he's running. And what is the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Koreye Nartana, we begin to dance. That's the movement. That's how we move and how we enter in the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada translates this verse. He says, men become strong and stout by eating sufficient grains, but a devotee who simply eats ordinary grains but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance. And Srila Prabhupada gives a very beautiful purport to this verse, very significant purport. He says, all the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they'll miss the opportunity to attain the eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure. So this phrase in this verse today, Kim Brahma Janmabir, what's the value of even taking birth as Lord Brahma? Anantakata Rasasya, unless you have some taste for Krishna Katha. And this is the glory Uddhava is singing of the gopis. They have this taste. This taste is so very, very important. And this taste we can get by relishing the words of Sadhu Guru. Sadhu Guru Prasadi Taha Jai Aswati. And if we don't do that, maybe we wear tilak, we wear kunti mala, maybe even we're doing different services in the temple and things. But if we're not relishing that thing, if we're not eating that Krishna Katha on a regular basis, Prabhupada says, then after some time they'll simply eat, sleep, and fall down. We have to nourish ourselves with this Krishna Katha. Srila Prabhupada described this in a very beautiful way in a lecture he gave on the Nectar of Devotion in Vrindavan in 1972. I'll go ahead and put this on the screen. It's really a beautiful description from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, this Shraddha has to be increased. We have to increase our faith. Our faith in what? Prabhupada explains it. Then when you come to the point of Ruchi, Vasudev Kata Ruchi, that's the beginning of our perfection. So to get to that perfection, the beginning of the perfection means Vasudev Kata Ruchi, or taste in what? Ruchi means taste, but taste in Vasudev Kata, in Krishna Kata. As we're hearing about the gopis today, the gopis have this taste and no one else has this taste. Uddhava is saying this is a special quality about the gopis. They have this ruchi. So Prabhupada says we have to have shraddha, that has to be increased. We have to develop more faith in what? Faith in this Krishna Katha, faith that I need to hear. Then Prabhupada says, then when you come to the point of ruchi, Vasudev Kata Ruchi, that's the beginning of our perfection. Ruchi means taste. And Prabhupada goes on. At the present moment, and Prabhupada was speaking this in front of a group of his disciples. The top leaders in this movement were there. You can see in the photos at that time, there were so many dandas in front of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, at the present moment, there is no ruchi, no taste. Vasudev Kata Ruchi, there's so many exalted persons. They're all sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada, but they have no ruchi, they have no taste. They've lost all taste. Vasudev Kata Ruchi. There are two faults in this, Prabhupada says. Either people could not preach properly, and what does it mean to preach properly? They could not create taste in the people. In general. And Prabhupada said, it's not the fault of the people in general, it's the fault of the so-called preachers. So the first fault is they couldn't create taste. And because they couldn't create taste, then the second fault comes. They wanted to take the place of Krishna. That was their purpose. Imitation Krishna, imitation God, that will not do. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he sings in Saranagati, Garita chare roli lama moji nakorinu sadhu sanga loy sadhu besha ani upadeshi ebodo mayara ranga hari he. The garita achare. What is my achar, my behavior? It's garita, it's very terrible. Rohilama Moji Nakorino Sadhu Sangha. I never really did Sadhu Sangha, because really doing Sadhu Sangha means that we get this taste, that we come and we hear from Sadhu Guru. Sadhu Guru Prasade. Vrindavan Das, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says, Sadhu Guru Prasade Taha Jai Aswade. We have to relish this thing. We have to taste it. And if we don't, as Srila Prabhupada says, we're simply going to fall down. We'll simply eat, sleep, and fall down. So we have to develop this ruchi. This ruchi is the essence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. This ruchi is what the gopis have. This ruchi is something that Krishna wants to understand. And therefore he sends Uddhava. So Prabhupada says so emphatically, this is not the fault of the people in general, that they're not interested. You have your tricks. You go and you say, excuse me, sir, you from here, from out of town? Oh, everybody gets one of these today, and we give them a book. We have so many different tricks which we use to spread Krishna consciousness, and that's helpful. But ultimately, the real way to spread Krishna consciousness is we have to create taste. But if we don't have taste, how can we create taste in others? And if we don't have taste, Prabhupada says, because they could not create taste, they wanted to take the place of Krishna. Wow. So if we don't have this ruchi, if we can't develop this ruchi, it means ultimately we're going to be condemned to want to be like Krishna. But if we have this ruchi, the ruchi coming from our Gurudev, the ruchi of being a devotee, the ruchi ultimately of our gopis, this is our line. Our line in Gaudiya Vaishnavism means the mood of the gopis, the mood of Srimati Radharani. And if we don't follow in the line of our acharyas and taste that thing, then we're going to want to become like Krishna. We're going to want to enjoy ourselves. Prabhupada says, imitation Krishna, imitation God, that will not do. So this preaching, this is the activity of the gopis. This is the activity of Uddhava. Uddhava is a guru. He's going as a proper guru. Guru means someone who's a disciple. And Uddhava has become a disciple. And he's gone to Braj. And he's hearing from the gopis. And then he's going back, and now he's being the messenger. He's being, in effect, because guru means messenger, he's becoming the guru of Krishna. And that same Uddhava then comes as Paramananda Puri and Gaura-lila, the same purpose, to teach Krishna, to teach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to taste this mood of the gopis, because it's only the gopis who can taste this thing. And this is the essence of our sampradaya. And this is the essence of this meeting in Kurukshetra. So I'm going to stop there. And as always, we like to request the devotees, if anyone has any reflections or comments or anything, because parasparanu katanam, the nature of this katha is it should be shared with different persons. If anybody has any reflections or comments, I'd appreciate it. Lila Purushottam, I think you have something, huh?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for such a wonderful katha. I was in pure bliss. I wanted to mention, like, I was really happy about, because first mind blow was when you explained those verses from 8th chapter from Ramananda Samvad, that Sakis expand and nourish the Lila. Then how is it connected with the Chaitanya Lila? It was so wonderful, because externally I would make a like simple meaning of it, that they nourish the Lila by the expertise of their services to divine couple.
I'm sorry, I just missed, I lost you for a minute. Can you just repeat the last few sentences or something you said?
I was so happy about you connecting these two functions of the Sakis made in those statements, expanding and nourishing, that I would have a tendency to identify it simply with like their expertise in their services to the divine couple, you know, like right in the context of Braja-lila, but to connect it with Gaura-lila was so wonderful. Right? It was and then like you connected it with that verse Chaitanya-lila Amritapur, Krishna-lila Sukharpur, which was so nice to make that point even stronger, that those two leelas must be relished and heard together, that they belong together, like they cannot really be relished separately properly. And one question I have, because you spoke now at the end a lot about kata ruchi, and now my question is to not because I could very easily make a statement, oh, I have such a kata ruchi, I can listen to Krishna kata, hours and hours and be in bliss. But now my question is, how do I recognize that it's not a sense gratification from my side? This relishing it. How do I recognize that it's not polluted by my tendency to enjoy it?
That's a beautiful point. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
That's a beautiful point. Thank you so much. Yeah, we should, our hearing is our
Now it's much lower sound than it was.
much lower now. Lower now?
It's becoming a little bit better, but still it's lower than the whole class.
Hare Krishna. Lower, huh? Let me
Yeah,
try some.
yeah.
Is that better?
Not really.
Wait, just a second. Is this better?
Yes, it's loud like anything.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, I thought I needed that thing. Maybe I don't. Um, so my grandma's once I'll just tell you a little story. There was one sannyasi who was visiting Bhubaneswar, and for some reason, the sannyasi came to me. I had access to Guru Maharaj as his, because I was doing some Grantha Seva and things, perhaps for that reason. Anyway, he came to me and asked me if he could go to meet with Guru Maharaj. And so I went with him. And he was very grateful and appreciative of our Guru Maharaj. He said, I like your classes so much. It's so wonderful. And you give me so much to the devotees here. But one thing I don't understand, why is it that they're not going out and doing service? They're just staying here and they're hearing all day. That's a good question. Isn't it? And Guru Maharaj responded, he said, Are Baba, what kind of service can they do unless they hear? So Navavedi Bhakti begins with Shravan, it begins with hearing. And by hearing, then we can do kirtan. Without hearing, we won't be able to do kirtan. But as you're pointing out too, what if we're hearing just a sense gratification? How do we know that's our sense gratification or not? Well, honestly, in the beginning, we package things in a way that there's some sense gratification. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says that there should be musical kirtan. It should be sweet. Otherwise, people are not interested in it. Although privately, when he was just with his disciples, sometimes he would ask devotees to lead kirtan who were not good singers and were not very musical, to establish that our purpose is not something musical. And Srila Prabhupada also spoke about that. But Srila Prabhupada would tell stories. He would say things in an attractive way for the devotees, because people want some kind of sense gratification, especially in the beginning. That's there. So then how do I know that my hearing is sense gratification or not? Well, first of all, I think it's very significant in this excerpt from the lecture Prabhupada gave in Vrindavan in 1972, where he starts off by saying this Shraddha has to be increased, this faith has to be increased. Faith in what? And again in this lecture, I think at least 3 times he says, Vasudev Kata Ruchi. We have to develop faith in Krishna Kata. And right now we have faith in so many things. We have faith in projects, we have faith in money, we have faith in organization, we have faith in going out and canvassing for people, but we don't have faith in Krishna Kata. But we have to increase that faith. So how do we increase that faith? By doing it as a service. Shushu Shadadanasha Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shamaha Sevaya Vipa Punyatirthana Sevana. When we go and we hear as a service, then we get some ruchi, some taste from doing it as a service. And therefore, my Guru Maharaj used to stress that this hearing is the most important service. Because if I don't hear, as he told that sannyasi friend, if they don't hear, what kind of service can they do? The first thing is, I'm coming to someone, I'm coming to you, Prabhu, I want to serve you. The first thing is I should ask, how can I serve you? That was a question Srila Prabhupada asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and he said it's the only question he asked him. How can I serve you? So unless we hear from that personality, we don't know how we can serve them. So hearing is service. And we should sit and we should understand. Srila Prabhupada was very pleased when we hear. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that about Srila Prabhupada, I've marked him. He likes to hear. Where so many of the other disciples, they were going here and there on Brajmandal Parikrama. But our Srila Prabhupada, he was staying and he was hearing. And that pleased Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. That's something we do as a service for Guru. If someone doesn't want to hear, we know in a relationship, I've seen so many marriages where the wife complains, you don't listen to me, you don't want to hear from me, because that hearing is the basis of our relationship. And if you don't want to hear from me, the wife says, you don't really love me, you're not hearing from me. So we show our love by hearing. We should understand that that's our service. It's part of our relationship with our wife. We hear from our wife, we hear from our children. Sometimes even the wife listens to the husband, maybe. Sometimes that happens. So that's a service. Is that helpful, Prabhuji?
Yes, thank you. It's yeah. Well, the conclusion for me is that even though it would be polluted with the gratificatory tendencies, then still you go on and you rather like concentrate on the attitude, on the conception with which you're doing it as a service rather than
that's Vaidhi Bhakti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there's 4 motivations someone has in Bhakti to come to the Lord. He says, Bhaya, Asha, Kartavya, Beauty, and Rag. Bhaya is fear. Someone's afraid. If I don't go to Bhagavatam class, they're not going to give me prasadam. I'm afraid. So that's my motivation. Or Asha, someone wants something. They think, well, if I go to Bhagavatam class, that pretty Bhaktin over there, she's going to see that I'm here. And she's going to think I'm an exalted devotee because I go to Bhagavatam class every day. Or I go to class because I want to learn some stories so that I can become famous. That's Asha. I have some desire. Kartavya Beauty, Bhaktivinoda says that Bhaya and Asha are very low class. Better than that is Kartavya Beauty. And Kartavya Beauty, we would say, we could redefine it as Vaidhi Bhakti, that I'm supposed to do this. Kartavya Beauty means I have some sense of obligation to my Gurudev. He wants me to do this thing. That's better. But ultimately, the real thing is Rag. The real thing is Ruchi, that we have that Kata Ruchi. But before we have that Kata Ruchi, we do it as a service for Gurudev. And when we come after hearing and understanding his heart, then we'll come to get that Ruchi by his blessing. Is that helpful?
Yes. As for me, the dilemma was that on the level of feeling, I would identify it as a taste, but I don't. I have a tendency to not believe it, that it's a real taste, that it's a proper taste. So that was a seed of my question.
Yeah, I understand something about the nature of Ruchi. Bhaktivinoda, in his series of articles, which were later collected and printed in a book called Bhakti Tattva Vivek, in that he describes how Ruchi is required for anything that we do. Someone goes to a bar in the evening, they have some Ruchi to drink alcohol and get drunk. Or someone is practicing jnana yoga or hatha yoga or whatever type of practice they're doing, there has to be some ruchi there, some kind of taste. Otherwise, they can't do it. And Bhaktivinoda says that Shraddha or faith alone is not enough. He's saying the same thing about that Prabhupada is saying in his lecture. We have to increase that faith. But even we've seen in our movement, sometimes devotees, they come because they have some faith. Yes, Krishna consciousness is the absolute thing, but they don't have ruchi. They're not able to stay, and they end up going away. So that ruchi is so very, very important. And that's a difference between mechanical religion and genuine spirituality, the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is what's blowing Uddhava's mind, that he's worshiping Krishna, he has some love for Krishna, but not in the same level of ruchi that the gopis have. This is a special quality that gopis have, and that Uddhava is getting from them. It's going to go and repeat to Krishna. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Just one little more thing.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you if we could have this excerpt from Prabhupada's lecture. If you could put it in our group, I'd like
Yeah,
to.
I'll do that in our WhatsApp group, and I'll also, for anybody watching online, Facebook, I'll paste it there too. It's a beautiful quote from Srila Prabhupada. It's
Yes,
a
yes.
quote which I would really encourage everybody to think deeply about what Prabhupada's saying and pick it apart. Look at each sentence and think very deeply what he's saying. It's very,
It's very deep. It's very profound. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Natalia is commenting also, Krishna Katha should be Mahaprasadam from the lips of the devotees. It's so beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And I hope that we'll be back again next week. It's a little confusing, difficult for us right now because we're on the road. We're traveling here and there. I think maybe next week, I'm not sure of the dates, we'll be in Germany or coming close to going to Germany. I'm not sure what our schedule will be. So we're going to try while we're traveling to continue this. Thank you very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Did somebody else here in the room want to make a comment?
Maybe.
Krishna, why don't you come close?
Ramuna just gained a completely new significance in my heart and mind. That was mind-blowing for me.
Oh, good. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Gopinath being installed by Uddhava originally in Varanasi and then brought to Ramuna. So Mahaprabhu going both through Uddhava.
Yeah, and what does it mean that he's installed? Uddhava installs him in Varanasi and then brings him to Sri Chaitanya. What is the significance of that? Uddhava is a Gyani Bhakta, and Varanasi is a place of Gyan.
Yeah.
It's a place of impersonalism. And Uddhava came to Braj, and he got his lesson. So in the same way, Uddhava, now he's taking the deity of Gopinath establishes him in Varanasi and brings him to Sri Chaitanya, which is Gupta Vrindavan.
Which is exactly what Uddhava is being like, which is exactly what the gopis are doing by Krishna's arrangement with Uddhava.
Yes.
Bringing him from Jnana to love.
Yeah. And which is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants, which Krishna wants to do for himself, because Krishna also, he doesn't have that one pointed focus that the gopis have.
And that was the other point for me, that why is this so important for us? Because it's important for Krishna. It's so important for him that he comes as Mahaprabhu.
All right. She has great realizations. Thank you very much, Krishna Kun, and Lila Purushottam, Natalia, and others. Hare Krishna. Granta Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Somabeda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi Bo Vancha Kalpa Dribhas Cha, Kripa Sindhu Bhya Cha, Patitanam Pavani